All right, let's just jump right in. Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're taking that knot-in-your-stomach financial anxiety and flipping it into pure empowerment by breaking down the absolute core mechanics of budgeting. If you've ever stared at your bank app and thought, where on earth did all my money go this month? Well, you're exactly where you need to be.
We've got a super clear roadmap for you today. We're going to cover the foundational rules, figure out the whole needs versus wants dynamic, tackle the beast that is irregular income, troubleshoot some incredibly common mistakes, and wrap it all up with the true power of saving.
Okay, part 1, the foundation of budgeting. Let's hit the absolute basics, because honestly, budgeting isn't about punishing yourself. It's entirely about preparation. Now, you might be sitting there wondering why you even need to put yourself through this whole process, right? Especially if money is already incredibly tight. You might think, hey, there isn't much to manage anyway, so why sit down and agonizingly track every single cent?
Well, to answer that, let's look at Ofer Ganel's story from our sources. He moved to the U.S. with 2 toddlers on a super strict $31,000 salary. Because of immigration rules, his wife couldn't legally work and he was completely locked into his job. I mean, they were literally eating 20-cent packets of supermarket ramen just to survive. So for his family, budgeting was absolutely not about skipping a daily latte. It was a pure necessity just to stay afloat and avoid a totally devastating debt spiral.
And here's the crucial takeaway from his experience. When your margins are that razor thin, you need incredibly accurate numbers. This highlights a foundational rule. You absolutely must build your budget using your net income. That's your actual take-home pay after taxes and deductions, not your gross income. Using your gross income is pretty much the easiest way to trick your own brain into thinking you have way more money to spend than you actually do.
At the end of the day, having a budget simply gives you a crystal clear, centralized view of exactly what money is coming in, from your salary or benefits, and exactly what is going out to cover rent, groceries, gas, the whole shebang. It essentially completely eliminates those nasty financial surprises.
Moving on to part 2, needs versus wants. Because once you actually see that money flowing in and out clearly laid out on paper, you've got to categorize it.
This is where you starkly contrast your fixed survival needs, think rent, basic groceries, and minimum loan payments, with your adjustable lifestyle wants, stuff like dining out, streaming subscriptions, and shopping. By doing this, you instantly discover where your financial wiggle room actually lives. If you're consistently coming up short at the end of the month, well, those variables on the right are exactly where you have to start making your cuts.
All right, part 3, tackling irregular incomes. This is huge for freelancers and gig workers. What happens if your income isn't fixed? Because let's be real, traditional budgeting advice totally falls apart when you literally don't know what your next paycheck is going to look like.
To solve this puzzle, the Nebraska Department of Banking and Finance recommends this frankly brilliant 2-account system. Here's how it works. All your money goes into a holding account first. Then you basically pay yourself a fixed salary from that into a separate spending account. It acts like a shock absorber, making sure you aren't just instantly burning through those big paychecks the second they hit your bank.
So how do you figure out what that fixed salary should be? You walk through these specific steps to find your baseline income. Look back over the last 6 to 12 months, pinpoint your lowest earning month, and bam, you base your default monthly budget right on that number. By doing this, you're basically guaranteeing that you are always protected and can cover your core bills even during those inevitably slow months.
Now, when you inevitably have a fantastic high-earning month, don't just randomly blow the surplus. Intentionally direct it using a percentage system, kind of like this one. You could toss 40% into a savings buffer for the future slow months, put 30% towards paying down debt, set aside 20% for future taxes because freelancers don't have them automatically withheld, and then keep 10% for discretionary fun.
Which brings us to part 4, common budgeting mistakes. Even with a rock-solid system, human psychology loves to trip us up. So let's troubleshoot.
These are the big ones, the top 7 budgeting mistakes that completely derail financial progress. We're talking everything from just straight up ignoring your spending all the way to succumbing to impulse buys. Like, failing to track your expenses means you literally have no clue where your money is leaking out. And dropping that incredibly dangerous phrase, "I deserve it," to justify a random luxury purchase, yeah, that can wipe out a whole month of hard work faster than you can swipe your card.
But here's a particularly sneaky trap: forgetting to plan for irregular revolving expenses. These are the silent budget killers. I'm talking about stuff like vehicle registrations, annual insurance premiums, or yearly holiday gifts. Because they don't pop up every single month, we just forget about them. And then bam, they suddenly hit and totally derail our progress.
As financial expert Jen Swindler points out, proactively saving a monthly average for these known yearly expenses is exactly how you smooth out those painful bumps. So let's say you know you're going to drop $600 on holidays every December. You just automatically set aside $50 every single month starting in January. Easy, right?
And please remember, the ultimate goal here is sustainable habits. Mistake number 5 is a biggie: extreme frugality. Budgeting is not about eliminating all the joy from your life. If you cut out absolutely all your fun, you're inevitably going to get totally exhausted by the restriction and just binge spend. It's exactly like failing an extreme crash diet. You really have to carve out at least a few bucks to reward your present self, even if it's just for something super small.
To safely fight off that urge to impulse buy without feeling overly deprived, try implementing a strict cooling-off period rule. It's a total lifesaver against clever marketing. Write down the item, physically leave the store, and enforce a 1-week waiting period. It literally just gives your logical brain the time it desperately needs to catch up with your emotions.
And finally, part 5, the power of saving. Because navigating all these rules, setting up these systems, and dodging these psychological traps, it all serves one ultimate, absolutely critical purpose.
You are building this daily budgeting muscle so you can actually save for major life events and shield yourself from the inevitable emergencies. Whether you're trying to put down a deposit on a cool new apartment, whether a sudden scary job loss, or fund your education, your budget is the underlying engine that makes every single one of these goals actually possible.
And then there's the biggest savings goal of them all, retirement. Experts warn that you're going to need about 80 to 90% of your annual pre-retirement income just to survive once you finally stop working. Let me tell you, if you don't use a budget to carve out money to invest right now, reaching that massive number is pretty much impossible.
So, as you sit down and look at your own numbers today, I want you to ask yourself a serious question. What future freedom are you actually budgeting for? If you don't step up and tell your money where to go today, who exactly is going to be deciding where it goes tomorrow? Thanks for hanging out with me for this explainer. Now go take charge of your financial future.